Hi everyone, this is my essay presentation titled The Feminist Critical Approach in Joanna Russ's Work. This is my summary for When It Changed. The short story When It Changed is about a planet named Walloway where only women exist. Men used to exist, but they died a long time ago. And they found a way to reproduce by combining their ovas. The main character in this story is Janet, and she's married to Katie, and they have 3 children. They live a pretty normal life for a planet with only women. They have jobs, and they have everything you could think of in a planet. In their planet, there's no gender roles or there's no oppression on the women for their sex. Of course, they have ups and downs in their planet, but don't we all? Everything on their planet is going good until some men came down and said that they were going to save them. Right when they came down, they were already trying to demand and control them. This is my summary for The Female Man. The Female Man is a book about 4 women that are from 4 different universes in the year 1970. They are all genetically the same person, but they are only different in the way that their society treats them, which makes them very different from each other. The first character is Janine. She lives in the time of the Great Depression, where there are not many opportunities for women. Then there is Joanna, which I think is the author herself, but she lives in a modern world much like ours. Then there's Janet, who is the same character from the short story When It Changed, and you already know where she lives and her situation. The final character is Jill, I don't know how to say her name. She lives in a universe that is like the worst case scenario between like the war of male and female, and she is a warlord in her universe. They cross over into each other's worlds, and they meet each other to tell each other the ways that they each live, and they are all very stunned to hear how they all live. My thesis is there are many ways to critically approach a piece of literature. I will be using the feminist approach to show how Joanna Russ used it in her stories When It Changed and The Female Man. She writes many science fiction stories, which is a good genre to choose when writing about feminism because it's like a blank page for her to write anything she wants. In her story, When It Changed, she did a good job of getting rid of all of the stereotypes and gender roles. In the book, The Female Man, it is very clear to see how Russ approached feminism into her story, and I will talk you through how she shows it. Lastly, I will discuss the men in the story When It Changed and how they are depicted in her story. Science fiction. I think she chose the best genre to use when writing a feminist story because she can really write anything she wants to her advantage, and there are no boundaries or rules set for her. She can write anything or make anything up that she could use, and that is exactly what she did with the story When It Changed, because she invented a world where men completely don't exist. Another good reason she chose this genre is because she can give the reader an image of what things were like in the past with feminism and what they could be if feminism never ends. Like the worst case scenario, like in The Female Man, where it's a war between the female and the man. But obviously she used a really dramatic touch because obviously she can, because it's science fiction. Getting rid of stereotypes and gender roles. With the story When It Changed, the author did a great job in getting rid of all of the gender roles and stereotypes that we would normally have in our world. The women in Walloway can have any job, even if we consider it a man's job. She even gets rid of any way that the women could get judged for the way that they dress, because the women dress pretty plain. They wear overalls or painter's clothes or farmer's clothes, which rules out any way that the men could judge them, like how Janet thought that the men was when she said that he was probably thinking, oh, who plays the men's roles? But the men would have no clue because they all wear this similar type of clothes. How the men are portrayed. In this story, I will talk about how the men in the story, when it changed, are depicted in a sort of symbol for patriarchy. Everything in While Away was perfectly fine until the men came down. They immediately began to try to control what happens, like if they were the commander of their planet or something. They came down like if it was their planet to control. They were bringing rules and sort of oppressions onto the women already when they barely came down, which is why I think that the author kind of used them as a symbol for patriarchy. You can kind of see this when they are talking about why the men came down in the first place, which was they needed new genes because they said that theirs were damaged because of radiation and drugs. And they said that the women's genes from While Away were perfect. And that was their offer or why they came down. And so they wanted to use the women's genes. But Janet basically rejected that idea, and she told them to use their own genes. But the men said, that's not the way we want to do it. Which you can see how they're already trying to control what happens in their planet and how things will be. The year 1970. My last main point is that I think the author chose this year, 1970, because it was a very important time for women. And this year, the women decided to stand up for themselves and to make their voices heard. They went on strikes and they made a whole movement. And to add to the feminism, she didn't just use that important date to her advantage. She also put the 4 women in a time where they were treated in a certain way for being, a woman. Like the Great Depression, where women had no voice, or a time of war between sexes, or a time where there was no war at all and no oppression on women. And this is just my works cited.